All right, let's get right into it. For what felt like forever, Netflix was the undisputed king of streaming. But then, an army of giants, we're talking Disney, Amazon, Apple, they all showed up to tear down the kingdom. And honestly, everyone expected Netflix to fall. So how on earth did it end up winning a war it was absolutely supposed to lose?
And that's the big question, right? Because just a couple of years ago, the story was completely different. The headlines were brutal, the stock was in a total freefall, and the future, well, it looks seriously bleak. To really get how they pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in modern business, we first have to understand the battlefield they were on.
And you've got to understand, this was not just some friendly competition. This was a coordinated, all-out assault on Netflix's dominance. The world's biggest companies, with basically bottomless pits of money and these iconic brands, all decided at once that they wanted Netflix's crown, and they were willing to spend billions to get it.
I mean, just look at this lineup of challengers. It's a murderer's row. You've got Disney, with a century of beloved content from Marvel to Star Wars. You've got Amazon, which could just bundle streaming into its unstoppable Prime machine. You have Apple, sitting on more cash than most countries. And then you had HBO, the undisputed king of prestige TV. This was a fight against titans.
And for a while there, the narrative was pretty clear. Netflix's incredible run was over. The competition was just too big, too rich, and had way too many built-in advantages. The market totally agreed, and the pressure on Netflix became immense. It really felt less like a question of if Netflix would fall, and a lot more like a question of when.
So this all came to a head in the crisis of 2022. And this wasn't just a rough patch. For many people on the outside, it really looked like the beginning of the end. The company that had literally defined streaming was suddenly looking incredibly vulnerable. The numbers were just staggering. The stock price tanked by 45%. And why? Well, for the first time in a decade, subscriber growth didn't just slow down, it completely stalled. And in a business model that is built entirely on growth, that is a death sentence. The panic was immediate and it was severe. This quote right here perfectly captures the mood at the time. Analysts, investors, journalists, pretty much everyone was convinced the party was over. The consensus was that the competition had finally caught up, and Netflix just couldn't compete with the sheer volume of content and cash being thrown into this war.
But then, Netflix did something nobody expected. While everyone else was zigging, spending more, chasing more subscribers at any cost, Netflix zagged. They executed a pivot that seemed completely counterintuitive at the time, but would ultimately prove to be a total masterstroke.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. See, the other streamers were locked in this arms race for the biggest library. Disney was merging services, HBO was throwing everything it had onto its platform, but Netflix, they realized the game wasn't about having the most stuff, it was about running the best business. They shifted their entire focus from growth at all costs to sustainable profitability.
And they didn't just talk about it, they executed with military precision. First, they introduced a cheaper ad-supported tier to bring in customers who are more sensitive to price. Second, they began the controversial, but let's be honest, necessary crackdown on password sharing. Third, they got a lot smarter with regional pricing. And fourth, they became ruthless about their content, aggressively canceling shows that just weren't delivering value.
And the results? They were almost immediate. Let's just take one of those steps, the ad-supported plan. In 2024 alone, it brought in 15 million new subscribers. That single move was a massive success, proving there was this huge untapped market just waiting for a lower-priced option.
Okay, so this pivot to profit clearly worked, but it leaves us with a bigger question. Why did it work so well for Netflix when its competitors were still struggling just to break even? The answer lies in an unfair advantage that Netflix has been quietly building for over a decade.
Just look at this 2024 scorecard. It shows the stark outcome of these completely different strategies. Netflix isn't just ahead on subscribers, with nearly double what Disney Plus has. The really crucial part is that profitability column. While Disney's streaming division is still reporting operating losses, Netflix is banking a staggering $10 billion in profit. It's so decisive that even their competitor's CEO at HBO's parent company had to admit it, Netflix won. So how did this happen? How did a company that was on the ropes just 2 years ago end up in such a dominant position, while its richer, more established rivals are still struggling? It wasn't just about ads or password crackdowns. The real secret is so much deeper.
And here it is. This is the core strategic mistake that all the competitors made. They believed that winning the streaming war was about having the biggest library, more movies, more shows, just more everything. Netflix understood a different truth, something they learned way back in their days competing with Blockbuster. Winning is about having better personalization. It's not about having everything. It's about getting the right thing in front of the right user at the right time.
This is where the famous Netflix algorithm comes in. But look, it's not just a recommendation engine. It is the absolute core of their entire business model. It's the thing that decides to show you a trailer for some niche documentary, not just a poster for the latest blockbuster, because it knows, based on everything you've ever watched, that you're more likely to actually click play. This maximizes your engagement, which reduces cancellations, which directly fuels their profitability. It's a brilliant loop.
So, you can really boil their success down to these 4 pillars. First, they create these must-see, binge-worthy originals that just take over the cultural conversation. Second, they use that world-class algorithm to make sure those originals find the perfect audience, maximizing their impact. Third, they maintain a ruthless focus on profitability, making sure every dollar spent delivers a return. And fourth, they invest heavily in regional content that turns into global hits. Think Squid Game from Korea or Money Heist from Spain, giving them a truly unique global advantage.
So what can we all learn from this incredible turnaround? Let's distill this whole complex war into 3 simple, powerful lessons that apply to pretty much any industry out there.
First, quality of delivery beats quantity of options. Netflix proved that a perfectly curated, personal experience is way more valuable than an overwhelming, bloated library. Second, your real competitive advantage, your moat, is how well you know your customer. Personalization is way more defensible than content is. And third, profitability is the ultimate trump card. Chasing growth and market share while you're losing money is a strategy with a very, very short shelf life.
And that brings us to the final thought here. The Netflix playbook isn't just about streaming. It's a masterclass in modern strategy. So, a question to leave you with. Looking at the business world around you, which company that you know desperately needs to learn these lessons? Think about it.